Hey, yo, what's good? What's going on, everyone, everywhere? Welcome back to another video, man. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, share the video out, put that notification bell on, and set it to all, not personalized, because you won't get any notifications that way. And without further ado, let's hop into the video, okay? As you see by the title of the video, we're going to discuss electricity might-based DPS today, more specifically the AOE loadout. I like to go, in terms of AOE, about bit melee range, just because it does produce more damage that way. Now, there is a ranged version of this particular loadout that I'm going to include later in the video, but melee is what we're going to focus on, okay? So please make sure you pay attention to the whole video and watch the ads and all that good stuff, because I put a lot of time, a lot of hard work, a lot of energy, a lot of effort, and a lot of research hours into making these videos, these loadouts, these builds for y'all, okay? Every last thing that's on YouTube, Discord, the internet, any website or Dcuo forums, in-game players and chats, and everything in between. I do a lot of research trying to find my hand on any and all loadouts, test them all fairly, and give y'all the best of them all. Now, this is my actual loadout creation, and it came out on top, thankfully enough. And we're gonna hop into it, okay? But without further ado, let's talk about the mods first. Okay, so mods, we're gonna use one rifle weapon, and with that mod, we're gonna use blast adapter for our rifle taps, since we are AOE based. For head socket, we're gonna use supercharge circuit breaker 3 to get 5% supercharge back to us whenever we pop supercharge. And then for our neck, we're gonna use escalating might, just get more might back onto so we can hit harder. Back, we're gonna use berserker. Since we are gonna be melee based, you will actually see that your health, not only normally you're going to drop below 35%, more often than you actually care to realize, but especially being melee based, you're going to do just that many more times. Okay, it's a greater risk, greater reward, especially at 10% additional damage output. Mwah, fantastic. For our chest, we're going to use penetrating strikes. I've already said this a few times, the precision ones, but as you get more and more into the later in-game content and tiers, penetrating strikes is going to be way better than core strength. Core strength is better in early game. Penetrating strikes is better in late game. Think of the notion of 2% is damage increase on you, as well as 2% defense, and the adds defense goes quite crazy, especially with bosses. So 2% of 100, 1,000, 10,000, 100,000, a million, 10 million, etc., etc., etc. You see how it ramps up very drastically, as opposed to us, the players. Let's be honest, we're not hitting up in like 10 million plus yet. Okay, I think one of the highest things is probably a little bit under 5 mil for what we're hitting at. So keep that in mind. For our legs, we're gonna use restorative, circuit breaker. I mean, not circuit breaker. My apologies, y'all. Spark barrage, but we're not actually gonna use spark barrage in our loadouts or builds, just because that's more for the pet DPS, not so much for the might base. For our feet, we're gonna use dashing combos. For our hands, we're gonna use max damage. And then for our affinity mods, we're gonna have type A and B both be might, and then type C and D. There's no real good ones for the damage rolls, so I would highly recommend that you not only play your support roles, but utilize the type C and D mods for your support roles. Okay, mine are set to healer right now, but yeah. For our trinket setup, we're gonna have a tier 3 pet. If you want to know the highest tier 3 pet in the game currently, go check out Obsidian Chill's video. He made a whole breakdown guide, Excel stat sheet about it, so check that out. Go ahead and get our buff trinket. I recommend that you always make sure to buy the one at the vendor, since it gives you the highest amount of buff, as well as for your weapon as well. Okay, then we're gonna have the mummy, since the Black Adam is the latest DLC at the time of this recording, and it is going to be the highest damage backup. Okay, I like to have them backup right there. Then the fourth slot, I like to go ahead and put my orbital strike and swap out my orbital strike with supply drop, and utilize the artifacts Dead King Scepter and Philosopher's Stone respectively when I am utilizing those trinkets. Now, in terms of artifact setup, now this build is more meant to be more high burst, high damage, quick, fast, in the hallway, dealing with the ads, and keep on pushing, keep on moving. and a lot of times those ads die very quickly, so you definitely don't want to use something like the strategist card where it's really ever going to proc, and when it does, you're not going to get that many procs off it, so it's pretty much going to be a wasted artifact slot. As opposed to something like Quizlet, which is always going to help you out. It's a pet, it follows you around, it's pretty good. It's a lot higher damage than actually Grim, so it's going to be better there. And whenever you hit a supercharge, which we're going to be doing quite a bit, it does even more damage, okay? And speaking of supercharge, we're going to use Scrapulous Soul Cloak as a general case basis, but if you are in an EOG spam group, I definitely recommend that you change out Scrapulous Soul Cloak for Eye of Gemini. Just because it will give you the additional 5% might, 5% precision, and that 20% of damage all done by players in the orange ring there. Okay, now more than likely, especially if your group has good burn, you're not going to be able to keep fighting and have the orange ring actually go off. So that's why Scrapulous Soul Cloak can be better in that particular case when fighting in the hallway with fast burn. And you know we always got to keep the transformation card on us at all times. And yeah, now you can definitely switch out for the Mercy artifact whenever you are popping your tier 3 pet. It definitely does that nice proc of damage, which does actually quite a bit. If you want to learn more about that and see an actual whole build centered around that, check out my pet DPS build that I will be uploading right after this video go live, okay? In terms of a allies setup, now we all know Shazam is going to be number 1 for combat, but Superman is a close second, especially with the nerf that is coming to Shazam here shortly. So definitely keep that in mind. Shazam 1, Superman 2 in terms of AOE. Now I still like to run the Batman Who Laughs with Luck of the Draw just because all around it is very good. The extra stats is just going to help us do more damage. Extra power generation is going to help make sure that we're always pumping out each and every ability, especially since we're going to be essentially spamming abilities going down the line in our rotation time and time again. The crit chance is going to allow us to maximize our burst DPS loadout of that we're doing here, and the health is definitely going to help us in buff troll scenarios to get even more stats procced and buffed on us. Now, since we are dealing with hallways and whatnot, we're going to be summoning Henchman, maybe our tier 3 pet and all that. We definitely want to go ahead and use Emperor Aquaman for the Hear My Call, so we get that 10% additional damage for our pets, especially since we're going to be in the melee range. This more than likely is going to proc almost all the time. Now, a couple of variations that you can do, you can go ahead and swap out for the Cloak and Snare with the Death Metal Batman if you're going to be sure to roll. If you're not going to roll, then I recommend that you go ahead and use the existing setup I have. If you don't like that one and maybe you want to spam your combat ally a little bit more, more likely you're not going to be able to spam it twice within the same hallway, but hey, you could be able to have it right back up and ready when the boss is, initiate that fight. And what you can do is pretty much go ahead and use Shazam and use the power of Shazamly to, when you use combat ally, you get 6% might and 3% precision for 30 seconds, so it's a good buff, lasts a good minute. You can definitely pair that with Cloak and Snare and or Death Metal Batman, depending on how you're trying to go about things. And take Emperor Aquaman out if you're not really using that many pets like that, and have Superman in your combat ability slot. Now, if you need a little bit cheaper alternative to the combat ally, go ahead, definitely rank up Cyborg. It's always been a good pick, and he will continue to be a good pick. Now, in terms of our actual spec of how we are specking this out, I got rifle. Normally I'll say just get the one and just call it a day, but if you are going to rifle tap and you got probably, I say 450 to 500 plus skill points, go ahead and get the rifle mastery. It's going to be worth it, especially with those rifle taps, just doing a little bit more increased damage. You don't need any other weapons, not necessarily at all. Now, when it comes to your movement, I would recommend that you definitely get the go fast, and if you're super speed, which I will give a super speed variation of this loadout, as well as a non-super speed variation of this loadout. So if you are super speed, I recommend that you definitely get Whirling Dervish, make your way on down. I like to get the Breakout Masteries and Resistances and whatnot, just because one, I have enough skill points for it, and two, since we are in melee range, you want to make sure you're always up and not controlled, not thrown around, able to still break out and all that good stuff, okay? In terms of iconic powers, you do not need all these. For this particular build, you really just want to use Super Strength, and you can make a case for Neo Venom boost and or Word of Power. Now, another thing you could use is Pheromone Bloom. That's if you want to keep proccing the Eye Gemini orange field consistently throughout your instance. But if you're having a lot of fast burn, that may not be the best for you. Now, in terms of our stat point distribution, we're going to focus on the superpower focus there. Then pretty much go down the left-hand column here for our critical attack chance first, critical attack damage second, dump everything in mind power, and I like to do a pretty decently even split between precision for our weapon taps and health for 1, survivability, and 2, for the buff trolls. Now, I like to still get 1 in the other stats, restoration to help out the group, and myself with healing from Arc Lightning, vitalization for weapon taps to make sure we always keep our power up. It's minuscule, but it helps occasionally. Dominance for a little bit extra control effects and stuns that we can do, maybe save our life a couple times here and there. Now, in terms of the actual loadout, we're going to use Arc Lightning for burst. It's one of the best burst moves in the entire game. It's absolutely amazing. I guess someone's trying to invite me. Voltaic Blast, excellent burst moves. Pretty much electricity's probably third best burst for electricity power set. Electro Burst, which is arguably electricity's best burst move in its arsenal, but it is very tied to the melee range, so definitely keep that in mind. Tesla Ball, and we actually use Tesla Ball over Electrogenesis because we're able to proc Tesla Ball like 1 and some change. We're able to hit it twice, but for our 10-second parser, it's going to count like 1.5 times, 1.25 times, okay, and that kind of range there, and that would actually do more damage than just 1 Electrogenesis would. Then we're going to go on to Whirling Dervish, then Circuit Breaker, that is pretty much mandatory at this point. Now, if you were to use Word of Power, you can definitely swap out something like Whirling Dervish, or even just Tesla Ball altogether for the extra Word of Power, just so you can always keep everything just buffed up and proccing across the board. Now, you can also go ahead and do the same with Neo Venom Boost if you have that kind of group that can allow you to alternate between Neo Venom Boost and Circuit Breaker back and forth. But if not, just a standard case, standard basis of this loadout will be this one right here. Now, in terms of rotation, pretty much going left to right, and then on the Whirling Dervish, go for about 3 seconds, and on the as you're going into the 4th second, go ahead and tap your melee button to go ahead and do the cancellation as well as the additional damage move, and then you'll be able to keep going. Now, in terms of actual parse, you won't be able to see much of a good parse because Spartan targets heavily rely on strategist card to hit in the proper ranges that we consider good damage nowadays. But do trust you me, compared to my precision loadouts that I already posted, these do on par damage, slightly lower amounts of damage, but they can still hit in the high notes of the same range that the precision can. Okay, so let me go ahead and show y'all what I am referring to here. So you just go right one across the other. Now, you can definitely, in between each and every ability, throw in a rifle tap, which will definitely increase the DPS tremendously, okay? Just an additional dot, essentially. And you just really need these strategy card to proc. So 3 to 4 of the adds of the 5 is where you're really going to see a major difference. Actually, we're already at the 300k mark. Man, I tell him you interrupting the video a little bit later on. That's all good though. So that's why we got that little bit of low parse there. But let me see if I can go ahead and do a raffle tap in between to show a little bit of what that looks like. I am messing up a little bit, so do bear with me, y'all. kind of anticipating him giving me another invite to that chat. Yeah, that's why I kind of went down. Now this is a very burst heavy build, so if you do not crit, it will definitely make a world of a difference. But if you do crit, it is one of the highest things you could really do. It is absolutely incredible the amount of damage you can do with this particular loadout here, and it's perfect for those encounters in the hallways. Now, as I said before, it is very crit reliant, so when you don't crit, you will get a low number, but when you do crit, you will get a high number. Now, with this loadout here, I was still able to hit over 340,000 per second on some of the higher notes, and stay pretty consistent in the higher 200s to low 300s on the lower notes when everything is going good and my strategist card is working properly. But in terms of actual content, I would recommend that you use Scrap the Soul Cloak as a general case basis. And if you're able to still spam out superchargers like that, definitely throw in Eye of Gemini instead. Now, if you just want to maximize everything and maybe the burn is way too fast for Eye of Gemini to be any use to you, definitely still throw back in Scrap the Soul Cloak, okay? So keep that in mind. Now, if you are not super speed, you can definitely go ahead and throw in the electrostatic bomb here, and you can pretty much shift all this down one, okay? So you pretty much have a similar setup, and I'll even show y'all with the strategist card on, so we have a decently consistent parse to look at, okay? And so the numbers aren't just, you know, you're completely taking my word for it. You can see where I'm coming from on this. So you're just one after another, and since all the first ones are about 3-second cooldown, you should be good, fine, and dandy. Pretty much rotate the first 3 abilities until the last 2 abilities are up off of cooldown, and keep going one after the other, okay? Now it's going to start off a bit slow because it will have to crit for these things to really work and be effective in their full potential. Bad strategist card hits, which is not really look like it's on much right now. And we crit more, and the damage will ramp up dramatically. Let me see if I can do weapon taps. Now you just gotta spam pretty much your range to do the weapon tap, and you won't see the animation similar to how you're seeing me do here in the background gameplay, so keep that in mind. Strategist card is not being my friend today, so we will have to go ahead and definitely consider that the strategist card is not being very polite to us for the video's sake. Now, if you want a more ranged variation of this, you're pretty much going to replace Electrostatic Burst, which is an excellent burst ability, and replace it for Electrogenesis, okay? Do more of a dot heavy rotation and focus there. Now, what we're going to do is actually switch that around, since a Tesla Ball is a 6-second cooldown as opposed to Electrogenesis, which is a 12-second cooldown, okay? Nope. Kind of messing that up a little bit. I do apologize. Now this all without buffs, no trinkets, no nothing. Now you will get a little bit lower damage, but if everything does crit properly and crit how it's supposed to, you will see damage just ramp up and skyrocket quite heavily to even like the 260. So we're starting to get in those a little bit higher 200s there. Especially with all these dots, the strategist card should make us be friends again for the video's sake. Let me start using my weapon taps again. Just one after another, and then altering the Tesla Ball and Electrogenesis when they are popped off a cooldown. You really just go from there, okay? Not the best. I see, what, 2 strategist card procs on there, so hey. Once again, strategy card is really make or break with this whole parsing for the sparring targets to see how stuff are supposed to hit in terms of our good numbers and whatnot. But for actual content, where it's actually going to matter, and this build is more made for, we're going to use Scrap the Soul Cloak and or Eye Gemini, okay? Now, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, anything like that, any constructive criticism, let me know in the comment section down below. Try the loadout for yourself. It's definitely something to behold. I did a few DPS comps with these loadouts, more with the Whirl and Dervish ones, and absolutely destroyed people that I was going up against. I do apologize for saying destroyed for those of y'all that I did go up against, but let's be honest, I was up like 12 mil, okay? So without further ado, like, comment, subscribe, check out my might-based single target loadout that should be already up on the channel here, and then check out my precision-based in both AOE and single target or boss encounter loadouts as well. I'm gonna have my pet DPS loadout for electricity here up shortly. I already have the PvP loadouts here on the channel as well, and then I will have a complete healer breakdown guide for battle healing, you know, EOG spam, pure healing, and anything in between, okay? Without further ado, like, comment, subscribe, watch the ads, share the video out. Peace and shalom.